So the vaccine is coming.
I heard.
So are you going to take it?
Let's a few people volunteer. I know you are keen, obviously.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I will do it eventually. Like I think we're all going to be forced to kind of vaccinate against the COVID.
Yeah.
Do I want to be one of the first 1,000 people? Not really.
Yeah.
I've waited this long. I can wait a little bit longer.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm excited. I'm not sure. I definitely probably wouldn't be like the first, but to be honest with you, like probably 3 months in, if I know people who've taken it, I may do, just because I really want to like travel. So I'm excited if it's a thing, and because I think what will happen is, as long as a significant percentage of people have taken it, then you have those who've taken it, then you've got those who've had corona and they have the antibodies. You may have those who don't have, which is now like the natural world, because you've got anti-vaxxers, people vaccinated, and then maybe we can see Stogo all across the world.
Stock taking.
Yeah.
What's available in the world and what isn't.
See that this Rona is taking a lot from us. So
it really has, it's been so shit. It really has. But I see it like, with yellow fever vaccine, it's going to be like that. It's going to be that you can't travel to certain places without it. So I think that will encourage people to get vaccinated. It will be like running around you'll be running around trying to get the vaccine like before you travel. So that being said, I will get vaccinated, but I just don't want to be one of the first people. It's interesting. I've been speaking to like a few of my colleagues at work, and I've been like, would you do it? And they're like, people who do trials, for example, they're like, oh yeah, there's literally no, because the issue is not on efficacy. It's not about the issue is on efficacy, not about safety. So I'm like, how do you know? Because it's like 5 years down the line where you're going to be like, oh yeah, so the first batch that was given to people, this is what we are now seeing. There's now high numbers of this, high numbers of that. So I'm like, so that's why I don't want to be one of the first people.
What is efficacy?
So just how effective something is.
Oh. And normally what is like, is it like 3 years that they do these trials and all that?
It's difficult. I mean, they'll be looking at data like, I'm assuming on a monthly basis, then moving on to yearly basis to see if there's any like adverse effects, anything that is unusual or anything that is commonly reported. But that takes time, So I need now to after you.
No, like you said, I think a lot of things will drive people's behaviors, like travel and all that stuff. I just listened to this podcast for the very first time. Hello, my name is Natasha.
And I'm Xolie.
And I sometimes go by Nat.
I sometimes go by Michelle.
Yeah, this episode, thank you so much, guys, for listening to the previous episode. We talked about the US elections before they came out. And, as we're listening, we know the outcome. We've got a new president-elect, although President Trump is, he is refusing. So we'll see how that goes. So thank you so much for just all the comments. Guys, if you hashtag Gallons Guys, we'll see your comments. I also get to
shout out to Edwin Gosi, who she shouted you out and said, there's so much that I didn't know about American politics that I've learned in this episode. So, and she even invited you. She's like, come, I'll give you a green card.
Well, she didn't go that far. I mean, she said come, and I'm like, girl, yeah, I want to come. Like, but how?
Yeah. So if there's anything in America and you've got a green card, get in touch.
Oh my gosh. But yeah.
What?
No, this is for that's why people should watch the YouTube.
What did you say? I didn't hear.
About it.
Okay. I didn't hear. All right. Okay.
So if you're listening, that's why you should check out the YouTube, because we'll be sending Morse code over here. And then I wanted to shout out on Instagram, Obey. So we just tweeted about the episode, and we're now talking about, US Africa policy. What is the United States Africa policy, or what has it been? And he was like, oh, it's been leaning towards aid-based investment and exporting democracy in lieu of mineral resources. It's not impactful as such. The best we can get is a stable president who doesn't tweet policy issues as emerging markets that affect us more than other developed markets. Uncertainty is bad for growth. So I thought that was a really good comment. Thank you for that. And thank you to the guys who came on the live. We had like quite an interesting discussion, because even just the few of us, like the view wasn't unanimous. There were some Trump supporters and everything, because we're exploring why, some Africans support Trump. So that was interesting. So thank you so much, guys, for checking that out.
Yeah, I this is like your baby. This is your thing. So I was just like, I'd run with it. Run with it, But yeah, it was interesting. I found myself drawn into it a little bit more, into the whole election. I guess it was inevitable as well, like as the build-up kind of went on, and the delay, not the delay, but how long they took to count the votes. I thought it was just like, come on. I remember when Obama first got elected and I was working on night shift, they started the votes. I think by the time I got home, like we already knew. I was thinking, oh gosh, and it made me think about that and just how different it is, and Trump tweeting alongside and all these things. So it was interesting. So yeah, thank you for your interest in American politics. May we find you an American man, an American lover.
I'm interested in all politics, but like I said, I think it's just the pizzazz and the Hollywood, I think, that comes with it as well. But yes, just moving on from that. Wow, just wanted to say rest in peace to Ginimbi. Like, you
real. I honestly, I still can't believe it. Like, I can't believe that he's dead. Like, I can't believe that we're using Ginimbi and dead and rest in peace in the same sentence with him, and all the three other people who lost their lives in that fatal car crash. Like, honestly, it's heartbreaking. I feel like 2020 has been such a year of loss. I almost feel like we need to kind of get together and do like a day of mourning, of just remembering all these people who have died throughout the year. Because it's been a lot. It really has been. It's been hard. It's just been. To be honest, I'm really struggling with it. I keep looking at it and I feel there's a bit of a disconnect, because there's almost a sense now that we are getting so used to hearing that people are dying, and it scares me that I can look at something and see, oh, somebody's passed away, and then like the next thing it's like, oh, Joe Biden is doing this, or Trump is tweeting from the golf course. I almost feel like it takes away from the person who's passed away. It takes away from the process of grief, because we are there's already so much else that's going on that, like when you go home and it's called ubutana. Yes. Just that moment to kind of be together. Like, I think we're missing that. Not that I would have gone to Ginimbi's homestead and been there, but I almost feel like so disconnected from everything and everyone who has passed away. So so rest in peace, peace king.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it's
a lot.
It's a lot. And Ginimbi was someone like that I enjoyed his Instagram lives, like particularly during the first lockdown. He just seemed good vibes. Obviously, he was very rich, very wealthy. You know, so yeah, it just man, it's just so sad because I was watching and what's even sad is like, you know, like some of their Instagram stories were still live.
Yeah.
It hadn't even been 24 hours, so you're seeing them going out enjoying. But yeah, just rest in peace. I'm still old school. I don't believe in you know, this whole like giving think pieces about people who've died. I just believe like once people have passed on, they're not in this physical realm to defend themselves. So just let them rest and just be kind in your words. And there's no need to, yeah, some of the things that I've been seeing have been quite unkind. But yeah, rest in peace. Rest in peace, all of them.
And also Gringo, I don't know if this is fake or real news now, because I think somebody reported it yesterday that he'd passed, or was it the day yesterday, that he had passed away. Then it was like, oh, it's false. And then it's back on again. So a TV icon, like I remember watching Gringo with his mound of salsa. Piece one on the side. Like I remember that growing up. So yeah.
Rest in peace to him.
Rest in peace to him too.
Guys, may the rest of 2020 be kind to us. And just moving on from that, politics. So I had already talked about the US where we are. Just the only thing is, I think Trump's behavior is quite interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what happens between now up until January, when President-elect Biden is officially inaugurated. I remember somebody was asking, why does it take that long? It's because in the US, it's not just a change in president, vice president, it's an overhaul change. So like in the United Kingdom system, for example, you have your prime minister, then you have the civil service, and then the civil servants are supposed to be impartial, so they remain in post.
Right, yeah.
Whereas in America, it is an overhaul change of the administration.
You're not coming with your family.
Yeah?
So you come in with the people who are supporting, who are for you.
Yeah. So like, for example, like in the UK, whoever works at the Department of Health and is the, lead policy person for this, in the UK, they would remain. But in the United States, like thousands of people are all changed. So that's why. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, because clearly Trump is very adamant that, the election has been rigged. And this is the first in US elections. It's actually chipping away at democracy, because the cornerstone of its democracy is saying we have a peaceful transition of power. But anyway, we'll see. And then I just quickly wanted to mention about Zim. I know we haven't talked about Zim for a number of reasons, particularly fatigue. But you know what? Zim Zim is just doing its thing. Unfortunately, Hopewell Chinono, who was arrested before, has been arrested again. And is in prison. So it's just something that we kind of just need to watch and be vigilant against. I really don't know, what the solution is. I don't know, but it's just something to flag that the Zim issue is still very much alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had an interesting conversation with one of my friends over this weekend. And, we're just talking about life, about relationships, as we always end up talking about relationships as we get a little bit older, I suppose. And he mentioned something that I found really interesting, in that, so he's single, he's got kids, and, really hands-on dad, very, very much hands-on. So he was saying to me, he was like, oh, you know what? I really want to be with somebody, right? But he says that he's noticing that he's now going for younger women. So I was like, okay, well, what do you mean by that and why? And he went on to explain that he wanted somebody who was a little bit younger because he felt that there was no pressure in having kids, right? So he was like, somebody who's younger is probably a little bit more invested in their career or in their education. They have got things that they're aspiring to. Whereas when you tend to go for women who are slightly my age or a little bit older, they are kind of, if they don't have children, then that is one of the number one agendas that they have. They are ready to settle down. They're ready to have kids. So I was like, okay, so this is interesting. So when you are younger, this was never an issue, but now you're in a position where you are getting a little bit older, you have got kids, and you are in a way denying women who are our age or your age the opportunity to be with you because you think that automatically that they want kids. And of course, this is some women. Can't generalize everybody. You can't paint everybody with the same brush. But he was saying that the majority of women that he's been with that are in their late 30s, early 40s, are kind of who perhaps maybe are not married, or also not married, who have not been married, who don't have kids, are ready to kind of settle down. And he's not in the space where he wants to do that. He wants to get to enjoy somebody. He wants to, he's thinking 5-10 years down the line, maybe settle down and maybe have a child. But she's like, I've got my hands full at the moment, and my kids are already are keeping me busy. And I was saying, is that a little bit, I don't know how I feel about that, because as time progresses, the chances of women conceiving they reduce, whereas for a man they stay the same, because they produce sperm I was reading somewhere I've forgotten, they produce sperm regularly, but whereas it's quite different for women. So it made me think, like, what are your thoughts in terms of, if you were to meet somebody who was, you thought, oh, this person is somebody I'd like to build with, but they didn't want to have kids imminently. Like, what would your thought process be, and is that a relationship that you would pursue, or would you be looking at options? Like, what sort of things would you be wanting in that relationship?
To be honest, I think it's difficult to answer, because I really, really do think it's on a case-by-case basis. But it kind of, like what you're saying, immediately got me thinking about a conversation that I had with someone a while back, probably at the beginning of the year. And, we were talking about, so yes, it is a biological reality that, as we get older, the chances do lessen in terms of being able to conceive naturally. And the biological clock is a thing. So in your friend's case, if he's gonna meet women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, who are clear that they want to be parents, they want to be moms, then yes, they're going to put the pressure. But before we kind of dive in, I do think that women shouldn't be shamed for that, right? Because I do think we've kind of been navigating the space where you're told that, if you meet someone, to try and maybe go with the flow, try and not scare them away by, being upfront about this is what you want. But actually, the more I think about it, I'm like, actually, you know what? I think as women, we need to take control and be clear that, okay, listen, I want to be a mom. I am this age, and, I don't really want to wait anymore. And you should be able to say that, and to first, like, you shouldn't have to like do theatrics, matrix, and like all these mind games. And we know that sometimes women do that, right? Like a woman in their mind, they'll be like, this is what I want. And then they'll go out of their way, like, not to tell the guy, but, they'll know how to get what they want, right?
Yeah.
And maybe get the baby or whatever, like Condola is in But I actually think, like, no, like, we should get to a point where I shouldn't be shamed for saying this is what I want. Then that way I immediately like eliminate someone who doesn't want the same thing. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't want. If I'm telling you that, I want to be, you know, I want to be a parent, I want to have a child, and you can't get with the program, then you should go, and I should be fine with that. It will sting a little bit, but I should be okay with that. And I think it goes with the whole like women being shamed for our ages. No, what do you want me to do? To die? Because listen, if you're shaming me for being in my 30s, you're saying I should die. Because you're saying you don't want me to get older. So I really think there's such a just change in how we just how we take ownership of that, and being really clear that, you know, this is what we want. Then it eliminates, then people like your friends then just don't, like, as soon as you hear over 30, just run away and be like, but again, it doesn't, because women in their 20s, some of them are now, you know, hearing some of these stories, and they're more like open to like, okay, you know, maybe I'll start a family at a younger age, you know. So I think that's kind of like my thinking. Like,
I was saying, okay, no, and I totally agree with you 100% that there is something about women taking ownership about their lives. You know, you need to know yourself that, okay, so whether in your 20s or in your 30s or in your 40s, whatever age you may be, you need to be the one to say, I want to have children. So once you've made that decision, you know, I guess when you're in your 20s, well, for me personally, in my 20s, I was like, oh, you know, I want to focus on other things. I didn't particularly want to have kids at that time. Now, if you ask me, like I say this all the time, that my story changes all the time. Yes, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't. But there is something about you owning your story. There is something about you saying, okay, so this is what I want. And I feel those conversations are a lot easier to have for me, and I'll speak for myself. They're a lot easier to have now that I'm a bit older. When it comes to eliminating BS, I do that very quickly. And, you know, I start having conversations quite early on, like, you know, this is what I want. Because you don't want to waste another 5 years with somebody, you know, you could have got a PhD in that time, busy studying and being studied by somebody else. So, but I guess it also kind of made me think about, and this is something that I know we have spoken about quite a lot, and we are no experts in this. We are just two women in their mid-30s.
Whatever makes you feel whatever makes you feel very comfortable is fine with me.
So me and Nat are obviously the same age, but it's so we're not experts in this, but it made me think about freezing your eggs as a woman. You know, again, this is something that I feel has been kind of people are being more open and talking about it a lot more than in the past. I don't know, maybe because also when I was in my 20s, you wouldn't hear these stories, but now I'm in my 30s. I hear a lot more people talking about this as an option for them. And like we said, again, another disclaimer. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about this. We're just having a conversation. So if you do know something, or if you know someone who knows something about egg freezing and fertility and all this, do let us know, because we would like to have a deeper, like a much more in-depth conversation with them. So Nat, do you think that's something that you would do? Like, would you look into freezing your eggs? I think it's how do you pronounce that? West human or West side?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, so it's what human. Cryopreservation, I think. But we'll put it in the more info section. That's the official term. And what it is so, like, egg freezing is one way of preserving a woman's fertility, so she can try to have a family in the future. It involves collecting a woman's eggs, freezing them, and then thawing them later on so they can be used in fertility treatment. A woman's chances of conceiving naturally fall as she gets older, because the quality and the number of her eggs drop. Egg freezing can be an attempt to preserve fertility by freezing the eggs when the woman is young and the eggs are of the highest quality. So that's what egg freezing is. And I guess it's important to sort of say that there's a whole number of like alternative fertility things.
There is, yeah.
Using being like just, you know, the like the collecting of your eggs, you know, but however, I think I was reading somewhere where they say that the success rate is quite low. I think it's about less than 20%, right?
Less than 20%. I think 2 to 12% of thawed eggs lead to a live birth. 2 to 12%.
And then my question is like, so I was also reading somewhere that some of these things happen. So I think there was an article that I saw that a lot of, I think about 76% of women, so this was from the UK, like a lot of women that did egg freezing, about 76% of them were single women. So it's because they didn't have any current partners. And, you know, that was their way of, of just being like, okay, I'm not going to wait for the man to come. I'm going to, you know, freeze my eggs. And then when the man comes, I guess then there's a number of options, whether it's IVF or whether it's, you know, artificial insemination, right?
Or is this another insemination?
I'm on the back foot this episode, right? Yeah, so I just think it's quite interesting. It'll be interesting. I don't know, is that something that you would do? Or
so interestingly enough, like before we had this discussion that we're going to talk about this, there's so much that I didn't know that I know now that makes me think, would I, should I don't know. And because again, the initial question on do I want to have kids, that changing every day, the honest truth is I don't know. But it was interesting to kind of see that, you know, like you already mentioned that after a certain age, like women's fertility drops quite significantly. And I was reading like a study basically that was done between 2007 and 2014. And they found that, and this was like a good study, it was over 2,000 people. And for women, I'll give you a few ages because, you know, my age is a mystery. But I fall in one of these. So when they looked at women who were like 35, there was 13 matured eggs, right? So this is like the whole sample size. And then the most that one 35-year-old had was 39, and the least was 1. So the chance that when you're 35, there's a possibility that you only have one egg. Does that make sense?
Is this per cycle?
So I think this is like over the whole period. I didn't look into full details, but the numbers are quite shocking. And as time progresses, like 40, you've got 1, the least eggs. It like the numbers are quite like after 35, like fertility really does, for women, that is, it drops quite a bit. And there was also this thing that apparently we lose 2 eggs per day after the age of 37. So women start losing eggs as soon as they're born, but by 37, you're losing 2 eggs per ovary. So, you know, it made me think that as I get older...
2 eggs per cycle, right? Not 2 eggs per
cycle. Yeah.
Okay.
And it made me think that, okay, so with it being less favorable for women to kind of give birth, and giving birth, there's also it's not just about the giving birth, it's about giving birth to a healthy baby. The chances of me, or if I wanted to kind of increase the chance of me having a healthy baby, then now is the time to do it, or now is the time to egg freeze. So I was thinking, okay, maybe. And then I looked at the cost that is involved in this. And that made me think again. I was like, okay, maybe I just need to make a decision about what I want to do and get on with it quite quickly, because it's so expensive. So expensive. Like you're looking at least between 5 to 10 grand for doing the getting the hormones, the getting the egg taken out, the storage, looking at the artificial insemination, all that jazz. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I was reading. So on the, like in the UK, they've got this thing called the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. And they say that the average cost of having your eggs collected and frozen is 3,350 with medication. So it's 3,350 with medication being an added 500 to 1,500 pounds. Storage costs are extra and tend to be between 125 pounds and 350 per year. And then they say, make sure you get the full costing. Then they say then the thawing of the eggs, when you now decide, and transferring them to the womb cost an average of 2,500 pounds. So the whole process for egg freezing and thawing costs an average of 7,000 to 8,000. And that is not counting the additional supplements, you know, that you may take that have not necessarily been prescribed as part of this, but as you know, trying to get your body in the best shape. And I was watching some lady on YouTube in America talking about it, and she was saying for one cycle of, well, for one period of collecting whatever, I think they call it a cycle of harvest, extracting the eggs, it was about, she had spent about 20,000 or so. And then at the time they were telling her that so what,
that's dollars.
Yeah, like all together, like when she was now counting everything. And I'm sure, again, that being the US, you know, is probably much more expensive. And you know what you were saying about the chances and all. So like they were saying, like, you know, in your teens, between your teens and your 20s, like your eggs, like the matured eggs, like you probably have 80 to 90% of those. And then I think when you then hit 35, it now lowers to almost like 50-50. And then like when you're now in your 40s plus, it now flips to like 10, almost like 10-15% chance.
Wow.
But what was interesting is I saw two stories, two couples, but these were couples who went through the process. One went through, like the lady did this, and then the other, like, she did this, and then they did IVF, and both processes were not successful, but they conceived naturally.
Oh, wow.
Like in both instances. So I wonder, like, which is why I would be really keen to have like an expert on, because I guess maybe the natural conditions of conceiving are, there are just certain things where it's just always best, and maybe it even stimulates the egg and stuff in a way that when you put it in artificial environments, it's not the same. So I thought that was quite interesting. But I was just thinking, like, have you come across anyone who's done this? Really?
Who's like on a personal level, the answer is no. Okay. But I have met people who've done it, like, yeah.
Or like who've frozen their eggs?
Yes, who have had to, because for some people, you know, it's not a matter of choice. It's like, you know, there's certain things that will be happening in their lives that you're like, okay, so you now need to either choose whether you have kids or you don't have kids in the future. So yeah. But then have I met them after they have done the whole like artificial insemination? The answer is no. I know that it's a bit of a painful process. I know that, you know, injecting yourself with hormones is apparently your ovary, it causes your ovaries to kind of swell up, and so you get a lot of abdominal pain. Those daily injections are painful, but, you know, I guess you're thinking about the end goal, in that you want to kind of get as many eggs as you can. But yeah. Have you come across anybody?
No, I was thinking actually, no, I haven't. I mean, I've had conversations with people, but I was actually thinking like, no, I really haven't. Okay, I know people who've done IVF.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, I don't know what that means. Like, because with IVF, I'm assuming, okay, I don't want to talk about something I don't know, right? But I think that there are perhaps people who definitely have done it as a couple, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure like maybe with IVF, there's some kind of like extracting the egg but it's mostly like artificial insemination. But again, please forgive me guys, if you're listening and you know,
we don't know guys.
Yeah, please let us know. But I have not come across like a woman who has said, oh, I've done that. Like I've heard like, you know, people like Tamar Braxton, like celebrities say, probably like it made me think of the show Being Mary Jane. I don't know if you ever watched the show. I thought that was a really good like when she was like trying to freeze her eggs and the whole process, which was quite gruesome. But yeah, but I've spoken to, so I was just thinking culturally, I don't know, like.
But that's the thing though, and I feel the reason why we are having this conversation, and maybe many of our peers are having this conversation, is because we are so, like, our lives are so, as a woman, your life is almost set out in a certain path. You know, you go to school, you're meant to kind of then get married, you're then meant to have kids. And then when we kind of like look into these things a little bit more in more detail, you're like, oh, actually, no, but this is what I want to do. I want to focus on my education. I want to focus. So it kind of veers off that natural path. So it means that in your 20s, when you're probably at the best time of kind of freezing your eggs, best quality and all this stuff, it means that you're not doing it at that stage. And then you're now coming to a point where you're now you're a lot older and you're kind of, you know, the chances are not, you're not on the best side of age, because, you know, the eggs that you produce are not of, they're not many, they're probably not as good quality as they were if you were in your 20s. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I feel we don't have the culture kind of, and society kind of helps to make us fit, to try and fit us into a mold. And then when we are out of this mold, and we're like, okay, so now I'm 30. How old are we, Natasha? Now I'm 36.
So she has asked me how old.
No, I'm kidding. But you know, you get to an age where you're like, oh, you know what? So now I'm this old, and this is what I wanted to do. And this is when you're starting to look at these things. I feel like that is all driven by society and culture. I may be wrong, but that's what
I hear you. I semi hear you. I think I semi hear you. I'll be honest, I probably think that maybe for me anyway, or whatever, it'll probably take us maybe another I don't know however many years for this to just be like a thing, like just like a natural thing. Like, because I think you never want to, I mean, first of all, like when you're young, you're not really thinking about your fertility. For the most part, you're thinking, I don't want to get pregnant. Like that, like that's your thought process. No, like, and that's what your family is telling you. Like,
yeah.
That's your thought process. That's what your family is telling you. And then I think, Owuti, sometimes it's not that I think a lot of us you hold out for, oh, I will meet someone who I want to do this, so that it's a shared experience. Because even with the egg freezing thing, right? If we talk about it, right? For most people, it's still like, you know, you're freezing your eggs in the hopes that I will meet someone who maybe wants to be a parent as well. Then actually, if we cannot do it naturally, you know what? I have fresh eggs for you. Ta-da! Right? Yeah. Although for some people, then maybe it is like, oh, a sperm bank or whatever. But I feel like it's almost like a scale. It's not always that, oh, you're freezing your eggs and then you're going to get a donor. It's like it's still the whole, like, you know, thinking of the whole traditional thing. Okay, I want someone who wants the same thing as me, right? And we want to, you know, have, like, bring children into the world.
Wait. But do you not think, like, and I guess this would be an interesting conversation to have with a guy.
Yeah.
If I was to meet somebody and I'd put eggs aside, like, you know, someone from home, because I think that's where the cultural aspect comes in.
Yeah.
And do you think that our African men are progressive enough to kind of be like, yeah, okay, so you've thought about this, let's use the eggs that you have, like, or maybe is that the question that you're also asking in a different way, in that our men, is a man going to come in and be like, yeah, okay, no, let's do this way, you know, because maybe there's a high chance of, you know, of getting you pregnant or having a healthy baby and all this stuff. Do you think that and then from Zimbabwe would be like, yes, darling, let's use those eggs?
No, we will. Yeah, like, guys, if you're listening, we have to ask them, right? So it'd be interesting, like, you know, your friend who you had the conversation with, who was like, oh my God, like, he's being scared away by all these women that want to be moms, right? It would be a good question to ask him, because, you know, would that scare him away, or would he feel that actually, okay, we've got time to get to know each other and then we can decide? I think for some people, naturally, I think maybe it may scare them away. But at the same time, it's about you. It's about you as a person, right? And I think maybe women do this to give themselves the best chance, right, for this happening. Because what if the couple, you're together and you're still struggling, and then you did like IVF or had to do other like fertility treatments to help you guys out? So you just have to think of it as, oh, and that's what I'm saying. It goes back to, women should not be shamed for what their wishes are, right? If you meet someone and it's like, you know, she wants to be a mom, like, yeah, that's what she wants. Like, if you can't take it, then you can't take it. But at the very least, it means that if you're not the person, then she can try it with someone else.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It would be interesting to hear from a guy's perspective. Would you be willing to would you be progressive enough to be like, yeah, okay, actually you've thought about this when you're younger, now you're in your 30s, let's use the eggs when you're in your 20s and see how it goes. Like, if you're struggling, I suppose if you're not, then you just obviously do it the natural way. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, another thing, right, is kind of like pivoting. But when we go back to this issue of the whole waiting, well, like you know, maybe women being a bit older, wanting to have kids. And like I said, I think the point that I was trying to drive at earlier was that a lot of it is not necessarily driven by someone who was super ambitious and they didn't have time to think about a family, right? It literally just could be they had not met the right person. Or maybe even if they were with the right person, maybe in their minds, they're like, oh, we know we're going to hold out and maybe get married, be settled. And then life happens. Maybe you break up or whatever. Then now you find yourself back at square one. So a lot of people, and it goes back to that whole thing that we're saying, even in the episode when Vanessa was there, that a lot of people make assumptions about older women that, oh, you're out there living your best life, doing this, not thinking about your future. And it's like,
and it's not the case.
It's actually not the case, right? So another thing that I was like thinking about is, so what happens so we've talked about that aspect, right? The waiting. I think previously we have alluded to the whole shortage of good men. Some people may think it's debatable, but I think, okay, that shortage of good men, evidence that a lot of men struggle with monogamy. All those things combined, right? It's kind of like what do you think of the concept of co-parenting with someone? Like actually, like being like, you know what, I want to be a parent. I have not yet met the one. I mean, listen, we've seen like people like Kamala Harris now, like she got married when she was 50, and Cynthia Bailey's getting married to her third husband at 50, whatever, right? And it just shows you that, you know, love has no age limit, right?
Yeah.
So maybe for some people, it may take a little bit longer to find that. But in the meantime, I want to have a child, right? What do you think about the concept of like going to a friend or something that you're like, you know what, I think, you know, I like this about you. You're clever, your gene pool, you know, is communicating.
Yeah.
All that, and actually like co-parenting, like with your friends.
So my initial question is, how are you getting, as a woman, how are you getting are you frozen?
No, here.
How are you, like, how would you get the fertilization? Okay.
No, this is an open conversation. I don't know, right? Because it literally could be like, okay, we're doing it naturally. We're going to try naturally. No.
It's naturally. And then there's some connection there, right?
No, it could be, but sometimes maybe the guy literally is just like, I don't want to settle down yet or whatever, right? Because what I'm saying is the whole holding out for the perfect foundation, which I think a lot of women, and maybe that's my experience, like wanting just the perfect foundation, then you'll think about, you know, kids and all that stuff. But actually, in reality, when you get to a certain age, you're like,
No, I hear you. Sorry, I was just trying to be a bit funny there, but I hear you, and I understand like where you're coming from. You're right. I think sometimes as a woman, you know, and some women are not really interested in a man. They just want the child, you know. For me personally, I guess that is a bit of, it's muddied water. So I don't know if I can give a true opinion on it, because if I didn't have my child, I'll probably look at it a lot like differently. But right now, I think I would enjoy that whole traditional form of family, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think that is something that I would want, you know, I would want somebody to be there, help at because I love sleeping. I would want somebody to be there to help at night, and not just somebody, but somebody who has helped me bring this person into the world. Or even if it's not that person, even if it's, I would need somebody there to kind of help, because I feel like, again, a lot of stuff is just left with the women. Like the women are left to do everything. I don't believe in that. I think they should share things out. So that is my opinion. Now, whether, if you'd asked me that if I didn't have my child, I might give you a different, I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I want to have a child, and I would do it at whatever cost. But because I know just how challenging and maybe how difficult parenthood is sometimes, I think you definitely need to have two people, whether it's two women, two men, or man and a woman, whatever it is. I think there needs to be parents, present parents.
I always wonder, like, how would like a man react if you're like, okay, listen, can you help me out?
He wouldn't have a problem helping you out.
No, but I'd be surprised. I think, like, I don't know. I feel like when sometimes I was speaking to a friend of mine who we always joke with someone else, and we're always like, oh, can we like, can we have your seed? And he's always like, kiki, and we're like, no, we're actually really serious. Like, but nobody takes you seriously, like, at all. And I'm just interested, like, guys, like, literally, like, would you not even helping, but you know, like, there's some people I probably know, maybe there's like a few people that you're like, you know what, if I were to have a child with this person without a romantic whatever, right, I could live with it for X, Y, Z reasons. You know, maybe I think that this person is, you know, I think that they're responsible. Maybe they come from a good family, or they come from a family that I know, and I feel comfortable that I would be able to, in my bringing up of the child, I would be able to also, be able to tell the child their full story. Or it could be that, I actually think that this person would be a good role model. Like, if the person wanted to be there. But like, with me being like, literally, I am fine with you and me, like
separate,
like not being a thing. Is that crazy?
I don't think so, and I want to kind of maybe go into that space where I'm not going to lie. If I wanted to have a child and I didn't have a child, these are certainly thoughts that I would be very much entertaining in my head. That, okay, so you know what? I have my career. I can look after this child. Do I have amongst me like friends who are able to kind of like, okay, you know what? Let's kind of do this together. I don't know if it would be within myself. I don't know. Honestly, it's so tricky because I don't know. I think because I'm not thinking, okay, would it be within my circle? Because then you don't want someone just to turn like down the road, I am now moving on and I'm taking my child with me. So there's so much conversation that will need to occur prior to this happening. But also thinking in the same, just to segue just a tiny bit, things like if you're with your partner and you're unable to have children, or maybe, and it wasn't, and we had identified that, you know what, maybe he's got a low sperm count, or maybe the little soldiers are not swimming, they don't have strength to swim. Would you then be comfortable enough to go to somebody else and be like, okay, you know what, this is our situation? There's always the issue of pride, and opening up your business in front of people, and which is why people then go and get things like IVF and stuff. But would you, if you're in a hypothetical situation, if you're in that situation, would you go to somebody?
That's a difficult one because that's like so many people involved. So it have to be, so particularly if, say, it's my partner, if it's the guy who, unfortunately can't contribute to conception, I think he would almost have to drive it. And you can get like donors and stuff like that. It would have to be handled because then we would have to have a conversation, and I guess at that point we're deciding how we're doing it. Do I really feel strongly that I want like my biological child? Because then if I do, then maybe we'll go down that route, or are we adopting? And like I think there are all these it's quite interesting, but I think probably like the desire for people to have their own biological repertoire is very strong. So actually the example that you've given, I think, is actually much more difficult than, say, if someone was single.
So but do you think, like, back to the two single friends coming together, I wonder if it would work better if the guy kind of said, you know what, I will happily do this, but I don't want anything to have anything to do with the upbringing of the child.
Whew, that's difficult because I do feel strongly that I would want my child's father to be. So, okay, maybe there's a discussion about the level of involvement.
Yes.
But I would never want my child not to know who their father is.
Yeah.
I want them to know where they belong, you know,
Yeah.
when, you know, like that for me would be very, very important.
So would you choose obviously it sounds to me like you choose somebody that you know over a sperm donor?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
ever you were in that situation.
No, I don't think I like that's not for me. Like, because then it comes back to the why,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Because if you think about it, it's not, I don't know, maybe this is another episode, because why
Yeah.
having a child, right?
Mm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people have children without thinking about it, right? We know
Yeah.
that things happen. Like, no one really thinks about it, really.
Things happen.
Yeah. No one really thinks about it. But
Yeah.
the truth is, it's kind of like, then 20 years, whatever, down the line,
Yeah.
then my child is like, oh, who's my dad?
Mm.
And then is it good enough for me to say, I wanted you so bad? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Oh, but do you know, you
Maybe it is.
and you're right, because it sounds to me like this might be a whole other episode, because there are so many kids who are born as a result of either, one night stand or loads of other things that are not so pleasant, where people are not planning to have a family. But if you are there as a woman, if I'm here and I'm like, you know what, this is something that I know would fulfill me. This is something I know I could give so much to this child. And then you go out and you have a child and they ask you 20 years down the line, who's my dad? And like, well, actually, this is what happened. I wanted you so much that I was willing to forgo all these things, forgo showing you who your dad is, forgo showing you, this whole side to your father's side, but you have me. And
Is that selfish?
it is and it isn't. And that it isn't, because I feel that even where there is two people involved in a relation, in whether it's in a relationship or not in a relationship, and they have a child, sometimes when that child is not wanted and ends up whether they grew up knowing that they were unwanted, knowing that they don't particularly belong, knowing that I was a mistake. I think that the child who has been brought in because of selfish reasons will probably will be I don't know. It's difficult. We can't speak for them, but I feel that and maybe I'm using my own experiences to kind of hold this discussion, in that I know that I would want to be in a home where I felt I was loved, where I felt like I belonged, where I felt that I was wanted, more than to grow up in a home where I can see my father, where I can see my mother, and be feeling that,
Yeah.
I can't wait to leave this place.
It's not so much about, for me, it's not so much about growing up in a home where you can see like both biological parents, because I actually think sometimes, like particularly if when relationships are going sour, I actually think it's more damaging for people to stay together in an unhealthy environment. But I feel strongly about belonging, that you should be able to be like, I'm from there. That's where my people are from. And I don't know, I feel like it's the core of someone, right? Remember, like when we talk about little fires everywhere, and Mia, the character played by Kerry Washington, and then the child was now saying, like, where's my father? And she was like, why do you care? You've got me. And the child was like, it's not enough. So that's why it's going back to the why, because then 10 years, 40 years, 50 years down the line, you've died, the child is there, is in therapy 8 days a week. No, I guess where I am is like, I feel like it's really, that's why I think I'm still clear that I want it to be a shared thing, whether it's shared through like identifying a romantic partner, or maybe other ways, but it shouldn't just be me 100% be like, this is what I want. Because I see that even like with me, like it's not just about you. Like when you now have the child, you can't control, like, because they will want to know, and there's going to be something in them that will never be complete if they at least don't know, like, where am I from, like, who am I, do you know what I mean? So but again, I think it's
a whole, it's so tricky. And I guess for every situation, every scenario, there's always going to be 1,000 opposing views. Because you can even think about people who are adopted, for example, and when they kind of ask the where am I from, and the adopted parents can be like, we got you when you were like 6 weeks old and you were thrown out, we are your family. And there's always that question of, who have I come from? But yeah, it's interesting, and I think it opens such a wider conversation as well, because it's not just one scenario. There's so many other little angles that you can kind of talk about and explore, and stuff. You can go deeper and deeper.
Yeah, no. And even talk about the adoption thing. There's this show, I think it's on BBC, I forget the name. Like literally, maybe like I'm interested in that because like my mom was a social worker and she used to work on adoption and fostering. And one thing she used to say is that in the process of adoption, like for example, say if the baby's clothes were in like a Sainsbury's bag, they keep that. They keep every single thing, that because they know that years later when the person comes, they'll ask. So little things like maybe like a little blanket, it means so much to the person. They'll be like, oh, they cared for me, they wanted me to be warm, right? And there's a show on BBC which traces people like who adopted, and most of them like grew up in great adoptive homes, but they'll always want to find the biological parents or their other siblings. And literally people in their 60s, 70s, you see them tearing down. And you hear them saying, what, I feel, even if maybe sometimes the parent has now passed away, but they now meet siblings, it's like there's something that's missing in them. And I've always thought, like, with adoption, right, because if you think about it from like our cultural point of view, there's a lot of adoption, but we never call it adoption. Right? But what I think is good about how we do it is you don't deny someone's mother, father, right? You can be the grandparents, aunt, uncle, this, that. You're raising the child, but the child will know that, that's my mom, that's my father, right? And we don't take on those roles. Do you know what I mean? And I always think, like, if anyone is going to adopt, I think you should always leave room that at some point
that person will
want. So I think you should always view adoption different to having your biological, and it doesn't mean they love you any less. They literally just want to know another part of them, So it's just I think it's just interesting psychology and all that.
It is. And, just even as you're talking, I feel like we could talk for hours. But I think the last thing that I would say is, you talked about the whole adoption. There's two things that came to my mind. I'm just reflecting on my own experiences where my dad, he was never present in my life. But I turned, when I was like 18 or something, I was like, I'm going to go look for my dad. And I did, So for this man who had never been present, who had never put a penny towards me or even put a word, I don't know, maybe he said a prayer, I don't know. But I did. So I did actually try and find out who he was. And it's all about that missing piece, I suppose, where you're like, okay, so where did I come from? So you have a complete figure of your mother, but you're like, oh, but I came from, there's two people who were involved. So there is always that kind of going back to find out who you are and where you came from. And then the second thing that you mentioned about, and I think we've talked about this before, about the whole quote unquote adoption from back home, which we don't call it adoption, but it is adoption. And the anguish that the adopted parents face when the biological mother parents come to take that child, to say, oh, you know what, yeah. So it's tough, and and I guess for that child as well to always be able to say, oh, you know what, this is my mom and dad, this is my mom, these are my parents, and the people that I'm living with are my grandparents. I think it's important to kind of have those roles really identified, and I'm speaking from personal experience. I think it's very important to have those roles identified and not to have muddied waters. That is all I will say on that.
Yeah. No. Thank you. And again, guys, if you're listening, and you have any thoughts, again, it feels like it could be like a series, like our whole theme, like about like learning. So if there's anything that we've said that is incorrect, please do correct us.
Yes,
if you're comfortable to share maybe your experiences, we talked about the freezing and stuff, please do share. And we asked, like, the guys, like, how do you feel like about the pressure that do you feel, does it put you off, if you come across that? We also talked about the co-parenting with friends. Is this something that we should really look into? I don't know, but I'm keen to have, and possibly maybe we should look for an expert to then talk about. I think there's then the fertility issues, then there's like, now we're going into like the family structures, and really, really, really interesting.
Get in touch, people. Let us know your experiences and your thoughts as well in what we've been talking about today.
Yes, guys. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter.
Yes. And Instagram. So on Twitter, we're at
Gellens Guys.
Instagram,
Gellens Guys.
Facebook,
Gellens Guys Podcast.
Email us if you've got any dilemmas as well. We'll be preparing for our next dilemma episode soon. So if you've got any dilemmas, get in touch with us at
mygellensguys@gmail.com.
And we're on YouTube as well. Catch us
at Gellens Guys.
And also, guys, if you love our content, if you are... Tamara, you're distracting me.
Oh. I was getting ready to say Gellens Guys.
Oh, okay. No, you can say it. So, and also, if you are interested in our content and you're loving our content, so please buy us a coffee, and you can catch us at... Our link will be in the...
Yeah, but it's if you look on all our social medias, you can see like where you can buy us coffee, and I think that is it. Oh yeah, but make sure you're following us on socials, because we do lives and all that. So we may have something for you guys.
Yeah, and I think on Friday we'll have our first Littings, guys. If you're listening to this, so it will be this Friday. If you're listening to this the second week of November, then it'll be this Friday.
So tell us more.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have just probably an hour, maybe less, maybe more. We're going to talk about Ngomo's book, and it's called The Story of My Life. So I don't know if you guys have read it, but it will just be to just 5 things that you maybe learned from reading that book. I've nearly finished it, and I found it quite interesting. It's given me a different perspective on Zim politics. So it'll just be interesting to hear from people who've maybe read the book. If you've got thoughts, if you didn't read the book, why haven't you not read the book? Is it because it's difficult to get? I know it's difficult to get. And all this. So we want to just have a session on that. And also, I've been in touch with a couple of Zimbabwean authors who are going to come on and tell us a bit about their books. So, like why you should read my book. This was the inspiration when I was writing this. This is what you'll enjoy about it and stuff. So just something like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. You're being humble. You're being humble about it, Guys, this Friday, Lit in Skies, which is Xolie's Literature in Skies. So all the book lovers, tell them to come on. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, particularly on Instagram. And we're going to see how we do it. Maybe depending on how it goes, we may save the footage and maybe put it on YouTube. We'll see. But it's just the beginning, and Xolie will be doing more. So again, tell your authors, get in touch with Xolie if you've got suggestions. And I think it's really important to say that particularly with autobiographical books, even if you have not read them, it does not matter, right? We can still have a conversation about it. I have not yet read the Nkomo book, but there's things that Xolie has told me. Like, for example, I did not know that Nkomo was a social worker before he was into politics. So those are some of the things that Xolie will talk to us about. So really, really, really excited, guys. Please tell your friends and everything, and let's support Xolie's Lit in Skies.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Nats.
Cool. And make sure you guys listen to, there's a lady called Tandilana who's got some new music. I'm sure you listen to it because we may have something for you guys.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
It's really good. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Asante. Till next time.
All right. Cool. Let me stop.